Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome on into the swear word. I'm your host, Brandon Swear, and hey, this is a podcast for the chilihead community by the chilihead community. Regardless of your spice tolerance, this is the place for you. Up tonight, we have an amazing guest locked and loaded, a very fun game that is brought back tonight, and much more. Episode 172 starts now. What's going on? Welcome on in Swear Nation. So glad to have everyone here. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble, and or Apple Podcasts, thank you so much for being here and continuing to make this podcast what it is. Continue to share this out with other like-minded chiliheads or individuals that are curious about the world of hot. This is where you can find everything to do with the world of hot. Also, if you're on a platform that allows for a 5-star rating and review of the podcast, please go ahead and do that. That helps get us in front of the algorithm and out into more other viewers who also enjoy the spicy world. So, with that being said, we have an amazing guest here tonight. We have Tom Jordan of 20 Watt Tombstone here. So, we're going to be discussing, as he is also a chili head himself, and diving more into the music side of things and talking about the whole art and appreciation of what is being put out. Nice little segue intertwining of spice and capsaicin and everything to do with the world of hot into a different passion, into a different avenue, talking more about the art side of things, the music side of things, and much, much more. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and kick it on over to tonight's discussion. Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Going good. How are
Man,
you?
doing great. Glad to have you here. Obviously, have had the chance to get to know each other a little bit here, over the last couple months, maybe. And so glad to have you here, learn more about your story, and of course, of all the great things that you've been able to accomplish. And of course, just share a little bit more about how a little bit of a crossover, if you will, how your overall enjoyment for food and spice in that sense, and kind of the whole music industry side of things, and just kind of diving a little bit more into that. So glad to have you here. And I guess really the only set question still kind of pertains in this same way. What was your initial dance with spice? What was your initial entry into the world of hot? And I guess what was that kind of moment that you, I guess, more or less owned your own, passion, blaze forward with, the spicy world?
I'm not really sure where it started. The the thing is, I grew up in a home where my parents are not spicy people at all. Like they like their food as bland as possible. We have a running joke in my family. My dad uh can't even really do pepperoni on pizza because it's too spicy. So, whenever I would give them food or make food, or when my wife cooks, obviously we have to dumb it down quite a bit. But when I was a kid, my grandma was a really good cook, and she always used cayenne pepper in a lot of stuff because she was like, "This is good for you. You need to have it in here." And she had all kinds of reasons why it was good. I don't know if any of them were old wives' tales or actually true, but she told me cayenne pepper fights everything. It's like the apple cider vinegar of spice. So I got a lot more spicy stuff from my grandma, but even them, they weren't what I would call, a pepperhead or anything. But you know how it is. Like you discover spicy food, and it's one of those things where you continue to, make it spicier and make it spicier, and pretty soon you get to where the stuff you thought was spicy isn't spicy anymore, and then you're on the search for the next thing, you know. And for me, I remember like back in the day, I'd go to, because we have a large Hmong population in Wausau where I live, so we have access to a lot of Vietnamese and Hmong and Thai food, which is great. But that was kind of the true test of where my spice level was, and I worked at the Daily Herald when I first moved to Wausau. And I met this Asian dude named Alex who became one of my better friends, and he would tell me all these recipes, and he'd be like, "Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this?" And a lot of it was, very traditional Vietnamese and Hmong style food that I had no idea that it even existed. So he would bring peppers over and make all this stuff, and he'd be like, "Here, you like spicy stuff? Eat this pepper." And his peppers were always brutal. So he would come over and make noodles and stuff like that and make it spicy, and of course laugh at me because he didn't think it was spicy. But that's kind of where I started to really find spicy food interesting, and the different kinds of peppers and that sort of thing. And now it's like, if I can't get hot sauce at a restaurant, I'm like, yeah, I'm never coming here again. Gotta have
Yeah.
hot sauce, or I don't trust you.
Yep, yep. I mean, it is interesting. Like, everyone's journey in is always a lot of fun to hear and learn about, and so on and so forth. But to really kind of find out the drive, the inspiration, the overall impact that it just makes on your everyday life. I mean, the simple idea of knowing that, if a place, whether it's said in a humorous way or deadpan serious, right? The idea of needing to focus on a place that understands what adding spice to something means versus a place that just
Mhm.
plays it safe. It is very true. I mean, there's very often, like, I will think through just trying to reevaluate my own life decisions on places to eat so many times. That is the main hinging point on whether or not I go eat somewhere. Is one, do they already make something that has some spice to it that tastes good? Or B, is this vessel that I'm about to get a prime candidate for X, Y, and Z hot sauce or pepper powder or fresh pepper, whatever the case may be. So very, very
Yeah.
interesting to think because, like, in that mindset, I've never framed it in that way, but it definitely makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it just, the I always joke around with people too, like when they tell me something spicy, I'm always like, is it like white people spicy, or are we talking like real spicy? Because, like, you go to your average restaurant and they'll have like the four peppers next to something, and you know they're always like, "Oh, you like it spicy?" And it's like, "Yes, I do." Are you gonna be real with this? Like, is this four pepper thing really four peppers, or am I gonna be like, eh? So, so that's the thing, is like, anything you buy in the store, it's almost like they try to be safe with it, and
Hmm.
it's like extra spicy, and it's like, I don't know if I'd consider that extra spicy.
Yeah.
I will
The
I will say this though. I tried the double spicy bulldog noodles. The double spicy ones are spicy. Those are I definitely think they earned the word spicy. The regular ones are they're spicy, but
mhm.
I can eat those casually, and it's not, it's whatever. But like the extra spicy ones, I was like, okay, I got to remember those are special occasion noodles.
Yep, yep. I mean, they're great, and so many people have been just really ramping up on those lately. In general, they're ones that I have definitely enjoyed. I'll pick up from time to time, but I think I was sharing that with you last time. Is just ultimately utilizing the seasoning, utilizing the sauce, and then what I'll do a lot of times is I'll just either throw that into something that I'm already making, like, using like a pad thai noodle or something like just a different noodle
Yeah.
in general, and kind of flexing the capabilities in that, or I'll swap it out and get a little bit creative with it. But yeah, no, it's that that part, the journey, the overall just breakdown into um, I guess really your inspiration to eating spicy has helped kind of, I would think, be going hand in hand perfectly well with. So let me reframe as well for anyone that's watching, listening, and they're like, okay, well, who's Tom? And they're not familiar. What, I guess, share with everyone a little bit about 20 Watt Tombstone. And I guess because where I'm going at with this is I can only imagine that your experience, just different gigs going around, you're able to probably bump into some pretty interesting individuals that may or may not have some fun food choices or some kind of crazy sauce or something that they've made along the way that's been kind of just fun to experience.
Yeah, I mean, so like with touring, obviously we go all over the country, and we've gone to other countries too, but like um it's interesting to see the different uh styles of food and sauces that are kind of a staple for each part of the country. Before I started touring, I didn't realize that there's Texas barbecue, there's, Missouri barbecue, there's Carolina barbecue. There's, I never knew that those were that different.
Hmm.
And so finding those things organically and just kind of uh experiencing them without the outside influence of other people going, well, when you try this is going to be this way, just kind of blindly being able to check it out has been pretty cool. Because like you know Carolina barbecue, for instance, is probably one of the most unique examples. um it's a very different style of sauce. And when I first had it, I was like, this is really different. Like, I can't
Hmm.
describe this. So you kind of sit there and you have to kind of roll through it in your mind. So being able to go to these different places and experience these things. And the other thing is talk to people who are local, who tell you, go here, go there. This place has the best barbecue. This place has, the best soul food. That's helpful too. And when you're in a band, you're kind of in a position where you're dealing with a lot of people and you can get a lot of input about where the good places are to go. And I feel like sometimes Google is not going to steer you right. Like, Google's going to give you the average Google user's favorites. They're not
Yep.
going to give you that hole in the wall spot that, maybe some greasy dude in the corner who plays in six bands is going to tell you. but but yeah, it's like experiencing food in different places, and seeing how they prepare it and the sauces they use and that kind of thing has been huge. But the other thing is, um, you know, playing with different bands. There's so many bands that have their own hot sauce now,
Hmm.
and so I feel kind of left out because we don't have one. uh, but at some point I would like to do that. But a lot of these bands we play with, they'll have hot sauces that they make or that they've helped make with other companies and stuff. And it's interesting to kind of see how they are making hot sauce specific to their region where they're from.
Yeah.
Um, and what kind of peppers they use and that sort of thing. And I never used to care about that kind of stuff, but getting to know Troy and stuff like that, now I'm going, oh, what kind of pepper is that? That looks weird, you know. But
Yep.
but it's just interesting to be able to see how the influence of where these foods come from kind of changes, you know, their uniqueness depending on where you go.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the journey, I love the impact that it makes, just, um, culturally as a means of connection, etcetera, like, it's fun to be able to have that kinda tie in, and, I guess as far as the overall love and joy for just, I guess, really anything and everything music related, because from what I remember is you've kind of done just about a little bit of everything within the music industry. Is that pretty safe to assume?
I mean, I've done a lot. I wouldn't say I've done everything. There's so much ground to cover there, um but yeah, I mean, I'm going to be 50 in April, and I've been doing music for a living pretty much since, I would say, 2011. Um I've had other jobs in there, but they've all kind of been like side job type stuff, whereas
Yeah,
music has been the main focus. So, um, and that's forced me to kind of explore other avenues of the music industry in order to make a living. Because there's so many different facets to the music business. Um, you almost have to have several side hustles to make it,
yeah,
and plus side hustles are never a bad thing anyway.
yeah,
But so I've dabbled in publishing, and obviously writing my own music. Touring has been a big part. Um, Music law. I never thought I would be studying lawyer stuff, but here we are. Um, I've just found that learning all these different avenues of the music world helps me do my job better, and it's because the thing is, in anything you do, you usually have to hire people to help you with it, because any business is just easier when you know how to navigate, the legal side and the marketing side and all that stuff. But I decided early on I was going to do all that stuff myself. So the band has always been very DIY. We put out our own vinyl. We put out our own CDs. We enlist people to help us make them, but we don't have a label to make them for us or pay for any of that. And it's been kind of a financial struggle to get that stuff started. But once it gets started, um, it's just about keeping the money flowing back into the business so that you can keep those things going. But yeah, I've dabbled in a lot of different stuff just to kind of keep my head above water in the music world, and um, try to make a living at this.
yeah, yeah. Well, and something that you said there, which it makes sense, and it's one of those things where growing up, you were always told like, focus in on one set, one skill, one basically like the old adage
Mhm.
used to be, and it was mostly due to an improper quote, like not utilizing the full quote, we'll put it that way, of that whole like master of one is better than a master of
Mhm.
none, right? But a lot of people leave off the rest. But in reality, like something that was so heavily ingrained growing up, which is like basically focus on one thing, be great at it, you do you in that space, has really just kind of unraveled over the years into the sense of like, uh, if you lived and died by that, sure, like not to knock anything, we need specialists in these certain areas. It makes efficiencies
Mhm.
better, it improves things, so on and so forth. But the grand scheme of things and the big picture here, realistically, if you're not making yourself well versed in different areas within your industry, within life in general, it seems that the thing that's been heavily ingrained was actually doing us a disservice in the sense of like not
Yep.
wanting to explore, not wanting to learn things, not wanting to understand how, once again, another quote, the whole like not let the left hand know what the right hand's doing type of thing. In that same mindset, if you don't have those two kind of working in motion together, you're going to end up being hindered, roadblocked, waiting on someone else to kind of help facilitate that. And it's, with this day and age of technology and fast information getting to you on how you can do anything and everything, it's almost silly to not at least try something on your own.
Yeah.
The music industry is a perfect example of this, in the sense of it was so heavily dependent before on you had to be with the record label to have anything come to fruition, to where now you have so many more artists that are coming up independently than, jumping into a record label. And everyone's just on their grind. Everyone's trying to learn the whole ins and outs. I guess from that standpoint, have you seen, I guess, the landscape of the music industry as a whole really improve because of this? Or are you seeing like there's some kind of issues along the way as this has kind of worked itself out?
Um, you know, it's hard to say. The best thing about the internet is that it gave everybody a voice, but the worst thing about the internet is that it gave everyone a voice. um, so it's one of those things where it's really a double-edged sword. It can be used for so many good informational things. But I really think the most important thing, whether we're applying it to music or life or whatever, is to just have the humility to understand that there are things that we won't be good at, no matter
Mhm.
what we're learning on the internet. That there is an area for expertise. There are experts for a reason. Um, we need to learn what we should learn to help ourselves, but at a certain point there's no shame in admitting that we aren't going to know as much about certain things as other people, and at that point we need to seek those people out. And for me, with the music industry, I've really tried to learn everything I can to make my job easier, but when I hit a wall and go, I can't do this, this is beyond my skill level, um, I still try to learn it. I still try to understand it, but I also know that that's the point where I got to hire somebody. We have a music lawyer that we have on retainer that we basically keep as a last resort, and I handle probably 80% of our legal stuff. I write all our contracts. I deal with all of our cease and desist letters. I deal with our trademark stuff, our copyright stuff. But what I don't do is when I get to a point where I'm not sure of something, I consult our lawyer and I just say, hey, is this way? Like, it seems like it might be because of this and this and this, just so I'm sure.
Mhm.
And, and we deal with a lot of bootleg stuff on like eBay and those other sites. And if I were to hire a lawyer every time we needed to write a cease and desist letter, I'd be broke. Like,
Mhm.
so what I learned to do with the help of our lawyer was come up with a cease and desist letter that's worded the way that it should be, says all the right things, lists that we are the trademark copyright owner or whatever it is that we're doing,
Mhm.
and then I can avoid calling my lawyer. Now, if I need something serious, like if there's something beyond my skill level, obviously I go to him. But I
Yeah.
think the big thing with the internet is understanding that there are limits to what we can do, understanding that we should be proactive, we should be seeking the knowledge to do these things ourselves. Um, but really, experts are experts for a reason, and these people have spent years in school learning about this. And my 5 minutes on YouTube is not even close to what my lawyer has,
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not discounting that we should be, you know
Yeah.
doing research on our own and learning things. It's just, we have to have the humility to understand that we won't know everything and that it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah. Well, so something that stood out that I was thinking of as well is, there's been plenty of times, and everyone has experienced this at one point or another. So, for the sake of the example, we'll utilize the idea of just simply putting something together. You buy that that item, that piece of furniture, whatever, online, and it comes to you and it's in pieces, as it always is, and you're like, "Oh, I got this," right? So you go put it all together, but then you find out that the product was made somewhere else and the instructions were made somewhere else other than that. And so then you have like all these different voices essentially that are trying to tell you like, okay, the manufacturer's trying to say this needs to go together like this. The instructions person's like, well, based off of this, it should be like, and then so by the time you get it, the instructions will say connect part A with two parts of, nail men to part C, right? And so you're trying to do
Hmm.
all these things together and you look at it and you're like, that is nothing like what I have outlaid here. And it's like,
Yeah.
sure, the instructions are very simple, they're very straightforward. You have all the parts in front of you, but just because you have the roadmap doesn't always mean that you're going to be able to decipher the path
Yeah.
forward. And yeah, very true to what you're saying in that sense. There's plenty of times where we have walked into, we meaning society, has walked in to try to build something, and it should be super simple, straightforward, but just because it appears that way doesn't always mean that it is that way. So yeah, those experts really coming in clutch for situations like that is it's absolutely needed in those times. So
Mhm.
over the years, has there been like one guitar or one whatever the case may be that's just like it almost had a little bit more oomph to it, like it made you feel a little bit more like ready to go? Like, did you ever have any kind of like instrument or any kind of thing that you would wear as like a positive vibe, a good luck charm?
Um, I mean, not really. I play a Gretsch, and I would say my Gretsch guitar is probably the thing that makes me feel the most comfortable. It's just for what we do, since we're a two piece and we have no bass player. Um, the gear I use is very, very specific to how we get the sound that we're shooting for. Um, and with that guitar, I feel like I get all of the things that I need, you know. So I wouldn't say it's so much a good luck charm as it's just kind of a comfortability thing with that particular guitar. Um, I feel more at home when I'm playing that. Like, we've had some shows where people are like, "Oh, well, you can play our gear, you can use our guitars," and I'm like, "Yeah, I can't. I can't." Like, what we do is pretty specific. It might not seem like it to some people. It might seem like it's just simple rock and roll. But sonically speaking, um, I run the two amps and I run them loud basically to kind of make people not miss the low end that the bass would be providing. Um, so the gear is very specific to me being comfortable and playing well. So as long as I have my stuff, I think I'm usually pretty confident that we're going to sound the same as, from show to show.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like in that sense, it would almost be, I mean, you wouldn't, as a race car driver, you wouldn't just walk up and be like, well, I also too drive race cars. And so I'm just going to use your team's race car and expect it
Yeah.
to perform like your own. So, yeah, yeah, I mean, I get the courteous thought to it, but at the same time, it kind of feels like a indirect version of sabotage at that point.
Yeah.
Kind of walking into a potential mess. Well, okay. So now with the different jobs and everything that you've kind of been able to do throughout, I guess fueling along the music journey, was that like, is that always been something that's in your mind? Is something that you wanted to really, like, has that been your dream destined goal, is just simply be on tour and just rocking out and having a great time? Or kind of what was your early on inspiration? Like, what were you thinking your life was gonna, what were you aiming to
um,
be?
I mean, when I was younger, I came from a very, very conservative Christian home, and they had a very specific idea of what they wanted me to be and do. They wanted me to be a preacher. They wanted me to go to Christian college. And, when I graduated, I didn't really put that much thought into it. I just thought this is what you do. Um, and, so I ended up going to a Christian college for a while. Um, I dropped out and took a couple years to just kind of figure myself out. And during that time, I was still playing music, but I wasn't playing music for a living. But I just did a lot of thinking about what was expected of me versus what I wanted to do. And I realized that I had spent most of my life doing what other people had wanted me to do. My parents had a very clear idea of what they wanted. My grandparents had me a lot of the time, so they kind of are why I have artistic inclinations, why I like film and uh, art and music and all that stuff. My grandma really was big on all that stuff. And without their influence, who knows? I might have been a preacher. I don't know. But my grandma, excuse me, my grandma kind of influenced me to be more of a free thinker and lean more into the artistic side of things. And she was religious. She went to church and she believed in God, but she also believed that you know I should follow whatever you know things in life I wanted to be into. And she always was very into the idea of being a dreamer and having dreams in life and not being committed to only being father, husband, worker bee. She thought that people needed a purpose other than those things. Um, so that kind of steered me away from all of that. But I also wasn't allowed to listen to a lot of music when I was a kid, especially rock. Like my parents didn't allow it. Um, I had to hide tapes that friends would give me at school because I knew they'd get taken away and burned. My mom burned all my records when they decided that they wanted to start going to church more. So I had like Misfits 7-inch records and Ramones records and all this stuff, and they just torched it all. And they were like, "You can only listen to Christian music." So that kind of was a deterrent, but somewhere in my mind, music was always kind of there, and I always had this urge to learn about it, listen to it, and experience different kinds of it. Um, so I think it was one of those things where it just couldn't be kept from me. But but yeah, I remember when I was a little kid and I saw the video for "Hot for Teacher" by Van Halen. Like, and I saw the little kid version of Eddie on the table doing all the stuff and like the hot teacher and shit. I was like, that's it. That's what I want. So that was probably the moment where I went, that's cool. And that video, like even back then, was so far ahead of its time. Like it was funny. The Waldo kid, that was hilarious. Um, so that was probably the moment where I was like, I want to do that. But it was a whole series of things that kind of drove me in that direction. And then eventually high school came, and then I started to rebel against my parents. And I would borrow tapes from friends and copy them on blank cassettes so my parents wouldn't know I had them. And listen to that shit on a Walkman. Nobody knows what you're listening to. You're listening to Black Sabbath. They think you're listening to, Christian music.
Yep, yep. Well, and so when you were talking about hiding the music and everything, didn't have quite the great things then. I mean, they're still good. I'm not gonna knock them because they kind of sparked my own personal journey into starting to curate my own music list. Something that I was thinking of is ultimately like there comes a time where you're like younger, you're just listening to music because it's like it makes you feel a certain way or whatever. You're not really listening to the music for the music, right? You're not really listening to, the way the guitar sounds over the song. You're not really listening to the real meaning of the lyrics and all this other stuff right at that point. You're really just kind of feeling a vibe. You're too young to understand. And then that moment where you finally catch on to something. And yes, if it, I can definitely relate with that in the sense of the music that caught my attention was also not something that fit within that whole Christian rock or the pop, like more mainstream things that you're going to be able to. I mean, I guess now it's mainstream, but at the time it wasn't quite as accepted. It was more rebellious. But my first thing was I was having to hide cassette tapes, and one in particular that I listened until the dang tape snapped was the Green Day Dookie cassette tape. Was like the very first thing that I had, really started to hide. I think I had that, and I don't know, two other different kind of like punk type of music, right? And so hiding that, and very true to what you were saying, it was like I would have this music blasting through my headphones, and I think no one else can hear this, but I would also crank it up so loud that like I would not be able to turn it up anymore, right? So of course you have sound bleed and all this other stuff, and yeah, that's how I ended up getting myself caught a few times listening to music that I necessarily shouldn't have at that time per my parents. And it was just, it's a silly thing. And I guess it's the same thing that I'm experiencing now. There's certain songs that like, it's just as a whole, like, do we really need to listen to that? Like you can listen to that on your own time. I don't want to have to be subject to listening to that
Yeah.
music. My daughters, because they're both younger, they like, they're cruising in the car with me most of the time down the street in the Suburban and just blasting out to whatever I'm into, or oftentimes now they're watching a TV show or movie or whatever on the entertainment thing. But yeah, it's a different. I don't know. I guess it's different now because now you don't have the physical CD, you don't have the physical cassette, you don't have the physical, record, you don't have anything like that. Everything being so easily pulled up on your phone, it's like you don't have I guess kids are still hiding it. They're just not having to
Yeah.
be, blatantly hiding these things. So,
Yeah.
it,
It's phones make it easier to hide a lot of things. And I mean, I don't know, my kid never really was interested in having a phone when he was younger, and he still kind of isn't now that he's older, but um I can see where that would be tough,
mhm.
because it's like, back in my day, mom wanted to find something out about you, she just dug through your room till she found it,
Yep, yep.
So, but like, I don't know, my son when he was a teenager listened to some of the absolute heaviest like death metal you could possibly listen to, and my mom was like, "Oh, some of the words are terrible," and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, my mom doesn't understand art at all. Like she does not understand, uh, you know, like the whole side of expression
Mhm.
and why people write about stuff. Um, but she was complaining about some song that he listened to being violent or whatever, and I was like, well, here's the thing: like, it's no different than going and looking at a painting that has violence in it, or photography that has violence in it. It's all art. It's all part of expression. Um, and like you wouldn't go be mad at a painting for what's in the painting and tell people not to look at it. I mean, you just go, I don't like that painting, and you keep moving. Why can't it be that way with music? If you don't like it, that's fine. Go listen to something else that you like. It's just because someone is singing about something does not mean they condone those things.
Yeah.
Their expression of those things might mean something completely different to them than it does to you. And that's the cool thing about art, is you can look at something and see something completely different than the next person sees. And as artists, we can explain that, and we can
Mhm.
tell people, well, this is what I meant when I made that. But one thing that I always love about our buddy Deej was that he always wanted people to experience his songs however they wanted to experience it.
Yep.
And he told me once when we were writing some music together, he was like, I said, well, I think this song sounds political. Did you mean it that way? And he goes, I don't really like to tell people what I mean, because if you're feeling something because of this song, I don't want you to stop feeling that because I explain my meaning. I don't want to
Yep.
take your meaning away in the process. And I thought that was a really genius way of looking at it, because what it does is it forces you to just kind of come up with your own explanation of what you're hearing. And I think nowadays, especially, we forget about that kind of stuff. We want to find the writer's meaning rather than
Mm-hmm.
our meaning. And that's kind of what makes art so special, is that if someone really is making art, they're making it for themselves. They're making it, it's a selfish thing. And it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I don't make something that's honest for me, chances are you're not going to feel anything in it. And it's just going to be like, well, I like the rhythm of this song, I like whatever. There's going to be very little hard connection made to a song. Um, so I think it's really important that we, as artists, kind of let people find it the way they need to, because I think that's the biggest part of art, is that it's not only our form of expression, but we're allowing other people to experience it, however they want, you know,
Yep.
and dictating how they see it is going to change their image. One of the things, speaking of that drives me nuts is, so Maynard, the singer from Tool, has this big thing now, big campaign, no phones at shows and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm old school. I don't really care for the phone thing at shows.
Yep.
But as an artist, my brain always goes to the same place. And it's like, why would I ever tell someone else how they can experience the art that they love? Like, I feel like that's pretentious to tell someone else how they can experience it. Because if that's what they need, if that's what they really like, who am I to tell them not to do it? You know? So for me, while I don't like it personally as an artist on stage, I like to see people without their phones. Um, I don't feel like I have the right to tell them to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think people deserve to experience art however they want to.
That's an interesting thought process in which that you just kind of took me on in that. And so I definitely want to. I have some questions, and I definitely want to unpack on that. And because there's some things that you had mentioned in there that I was like immediately, and then the last part talking about Maynard's approach to certain things also kind of was like it kind of made me want to go back on my own initial stance, which is it makes it's a very interesting thing. So I want to dive into that a little bit here. The yes, I 100% agree with how like Deej put it and how you were referencing there, which is like, I have always felt and believed that sure art can be for sake of conversation, the art can be as simple as just like this is a house, like an artist saying that. But I don't think that much in the sense of the way that I also view the idea of sampling things, whether it be hot sauce, whatever. That's great that the bottle on the side can tell me exactly the label, ingredients. It can tell me, inspiration. It can tell me whatever it wants to on the label. Awesome. I'm there for the initial immersive journey of don't disrupt the flow. Let me live in the moment of trying this, really embodying the flavors and the smells and all the things that you're trying to send across. Like, let me send that across. Let me take that in as my own journey. Let me experience it. Let me explain what I'm feeling or what I'm gathering from it. Same thing with like, viewing a piece of art, watching a performance, anything. Let me experience it and come to my conclusion. And then from there, like I can kind of see, okay, well, what was their thought? Where was their mindset? Because then that brings into a whole nother level of context of appreciation discussion, really getting deeper to the piece of art in general, because then you're not only having your view, your opinion, your outlook, you're having the artist's intended view, opinion, outlook, and then you're discussing likely with others, or just kind of comparing the two and seeing where the similarities come across, where what else is someone else feeling in this moment. Am I interpreting this because of something that had happened earlier in the day? Am I seeing this now or hearing this now different? All these things are fascinating to me because everyone is sure living in the same world as a whole, but we're all experiencing and viewing things in just the circumstances shape so
Mhm.
much more in that sense. And, something that I guess to open that door, because ultimately I know there's gonna be people on either side that are gonna, beat me down for this, but this is how the way that I've also always viewed, and why I've always loved art in that sense is in the same way that I've always viewed the Bible, because the Bible to me is also something that you can read, and sure, the words mean what the words mean, right? There's no getting around that. But you can read the same scripture. You can read the same story, whatever you want to, like, pick something in the Bible. You can read it today, in today's day and age, mindset, everything. And then give yourself, I mean, heck, you could have a crazy week and all of a sudden read that again. And boom, it hits you differently. It means something
Mhm.
entirely. And that to me is the beauty within the art. The art isn't just conveying the message, the art is also speaking to you and meeting you where you are. So,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like people the part of the fun of experiencing art is the discovery, you know, you discovering uh these feelings or emotions that are unique to you, you know. So again, it goes back to that whole thing of just kind of experiencing it yourself without someone else giving their opinion. And unfortunately now with the internet, we have so much of that, and it kind of sullies a lot of the things. And I'm guilty of it myself. You know, if I find a band that I really like that I don't know anything about, I Google the shit out of them and try to find out, did this guy beat his girlfriend? Does he,
Hmm.
does he have sex with 17-year-old girls? Because I'm at the point now where it's like, at 50 years old, it's like, I don't want surprises anymore about the shit I like. I want to know from the get go, like, is this dude cool? Is this dude not cool? Like, because there's so much of that. You'll find music, you'll find art, you'll be like, oh, this is amazing, this is so good, and then you see an article that says, well, so and so was busted with a 17-year-old girl. So and so
Hmm.
was selling narcotics to kids, or so and so's political affiliation is this or that or whatever. He supports this, he said this. And the mystery of music that we had in the 80s is just really gone. When I was a kid, I was trying to explain this to my son one day because he was like, yeah, Dad, Kiss is kind of whack. I don't know how you listen to that stuff. And I was like, listen, when I was a kid, we did not have Gene Simmons' Family Jewels. We did not have all this reality stuff showing us these people behind the scenes. Ozzy was not a decrepit old man,
Hmm.
swearing at his dogs and picking up dog poop. He was the Prince of Darkness. We saw just enough. We had magazines like Metal Edge and Rolling Stone and stuff. Like a lot of the stuff that I heard about Ozzy as a kid was like hearsay,
Hmm.
rumors that kids at school said. So you didn't have access to just everything. You
Yep.
know, you couldn't know if they were a Republican, a Democrat, libertarian, or whatever. You didn't know if they were vegetarian or if they supported gay marriage or guns or whatever. You didn't know any of this stuff. You just knew these little bits of pertinent music fact, and it made the music more mysterious. It made these people seem like they were larger than life. You know, when we would see pictures of Ozzy in a magazine, we'd be like, whoa, like this is huge. Like this guy is not human, you know. And we all heard the rumors and stuff. You know, I remember getting on the bus and a friend was like, man, this guy Ozzy bit the head off of a bat. Like, you just heard that. You didn't hear why. You didn't hear all the facts about, you know, he thought it was a rubber bat or whatever. So I mean, just the access we have to information changes how we view a lot of this stuff now. And it makes taking in art different. So I almost feel like in order to experience whatever art it is without any outside influence at all is not only hard to do now, but it really is the way to really experience, you know, that art the best way. And obviously, you know, we gotta be vigilant about, you know, the things that matter. Hate,
Mm-hmm.
racism, all that shit has no place, and it
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't ever. But like, you know, people's affiliation politically, who they voted for, that sort of thing, I don't feel like that should change our outlook on the art itself. It should be a matter of, uh, you know, is it good? Does it make me feel something? You know, are the lyrics good? You know, but the other thing too is we live in a society now where people, they want to be entertained,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this thing that's happening where they're not understanding the line between entertainment and art, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And we saw this, we see it every year with the Super Bowl thing, because there's people who want to be entertained. They want what they want. I want to hear this. I don't like this thing that's happening. I don't understand it. And I'm not the biggest Kendrick Lamar fan. I'll
Mm-hmm.
admit I'm not. But I appreciated what he did at the Super Bowl because it was art. You know, I appreciated what he did. Not the biggest fan of his music. Um, when it comes to hip hop, there's a ton I like. He's probably at the bottom. I think he's talented, but it's just kind of not my thing. Um, but I think a lot of people confuse the fact that art is not about what they want, it's about what the artist is trying to say about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we have very few entertainers, or we have very few artists that are both entertainer and artist. You know, we had Prince, who was both. He could entertain every day of the week, but he was still maintaining the art side of what he did. Um, but cover bands versus original music is a good example of that. People want to be entertained, they should go play a jukebox, they should go watch a cover band.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for art and you want to see something personal, then you should go see original music. Um, but people seem to be confused in some areas about that. And it's like, well, this wasn't what I needed it to be. Well, that's fine. That's how art is. You wouldn't go to an art gallery and be mad at the painting because it wasn't the painting that you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't like that there's snow in this picture. There should be sun. Well, okay, go to the next one that has sun in it.
Yeah.
But the problem exists because they don't view music as art. They view it as a thing that's there to entertain them.
Mm-hmm.
But they can look at a painting and understand that it's art and that it's not there to entertain them. So I think it's important for people to understand, it's okay to want to be entertained, but don't ask art to be something that it's not, you know?
Yeah. Well, and then so I guess because I completely dropped the ball in that, but this ties in perfectly kind of with what we were just saying. But the whole, I guess, to tie back to the Maynard approach of locking away the phones to come into the show, I one side I completely see the need and the overall drive to want to have that to happen, because obviously if you're not focused on your phone, you're there to actually enjoy the overall concert. You're not, potentially disrupting the person behind you's view of the
Yeah.
concert, all the things, list goes on. But at the same time, I see what you're saying in the sense of like somebody might actually enjoy that that's their preferred method. I mean, you see folks all the time. It doesn't matter if it's a professional sports game or their kids. They're going to be instead. Doesn't matter that they're 2 feet away from their child playing on the field. They're going to be watching it through the camera as they're hitting record, and it's like, hey, I get what you're doing. You're sharing this memory, you're saving this memory, but like you can hit record and then still kind of like watch the real thing happening.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of folks get caught up in that cycle, the vicious cycle of like, well, if there's something good, it's going to show up on my phone, and I need to, it becomes a crutch at that point. So I guess in that standpoint, where do you think their enjoyment aspect? Do you think that the person recording in that, or like that feels that they only should record in that moment instead of like being present in the moment? Where do you think that kind of comes from? Do you think it's like the idea of satisfaction of being able to watch this at a later date? Or do you think that this is just like simply becoming almost like a innate trait in certain folks to only digitally look at it through their phone?
Well, I think I think a lot of our human issues, myself included, um, stem from our ego. We are unable to just let things be what they're going to be. We have to influence the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think filming that stuff for a lot of people can be kind of attributed to that, because we have to have the proof, we have to have the bragging rights, we have to have a physical record of these cool moments so that we can make ourselves feel better later by watching it or show it to our friends. um, but in Buddhism there's this idea that speaking less is more powerful than uh, you know talking all the time. And I feel like sometimes we forget that we don't need to say everything we do. Don't need to talk about everything we do. Sometimes it's just better up here. Um, and I always joke around. My grandpa's stories were always they'd get embellished every time he would tell them. The fish would get bigger, the story would get crazier. So, um, but as funny as that is, the imagination involved of actually remembering things as they happened, flawed or not, is human, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I think experiencing those things without technology is better. Like me personally, I'll say that. I think living in the moment and experiencing those things for ourselves um, is good. And I feel like when you don't have the technology to save those moments, you can be more in tune with them because you don't want to lose them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, let's say, your child takes their first steps and you don't get it on film. Uh, well, that's a bummer, but you were there physically in the moment, not worried about your phone, watching those first steps happen. And I think that's amazing. And back to the Maynard thing, like I said, I completely understand where he's coming from. I don't like it personally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for me, it just seems pretentious for me to want other people to experience things the way I like them, you know? So, just being objective, I wouldn't want to do that because I don't know what this means to somebody else. I don't know what they're going through right now. Maybe, maybe this was their dad's favorite song. Their dad passed away and they want something to remember their dad, or maybe somebody said, "Hey, film that for me because I can't be there." We don't know what's going on in these people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, part of me, while I don't think it creates the best organic environment to experience art, I also don't know what these people are going through, you
Yeah.
know? So I feel like, again, it's pretentious for me to say, well, I like it this way. This is my show, so you're going to experience it the way I like it. I just, I don't know. I feel like that's not my job. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like it's my job to create this thing, show it to you, and then however you want to experience it, as long as you're cool to the people in the audience. That's the other thing. These people are paying money to see you. So you want them to have the experience that they paid for.
Hmm.
So if you're going to film a show, you got to be respectful of the people around you. If that's how you choose to experience it, just be aware. You know, if everybody's just aware of the people around them and we're being kind and considerate to the people around us, we're going to eliminate so many problems.
Yeah. Well, and true to what you're saying there, I mean, the thing that we've kind of been dancing around this whole time too. It's like so much of this problems in society, the deterioration of the overall human nature to want to be like helpful, uplifting, all these things has really diminished and deteriorated because of things like technology, which also help and facilitate. The difference is now, as a today's day and age, instead of counting on those next to us to kind of help us along the way, we've decided to, very true, tie back to what you were saying earlier. The ego comes in, and I got this, my black device over here that has all the words that I can just stare off into this screen and it'll tell me everything I need to know. I don't need your help, with anything that I'm doing. And that starts to kind of deteriorate the idea of communicating with others, finding and understanding needs, appreciating what others have done for us, understanding what others are going through, really start to go out the window. And something that you, when you were mentioning the recording aspect and thinking back to like maybe like someone's father had passed, etc., all these different things, like something that stood out to me, and I feel like, and I'm curious now, I'm actually going to ask my kids this later. Probably my son would be the only one that would fully understand or appreciate this. And then I'm going to start asking a few other folks. But uh, I'm willing to bet, just based off of trying to recall my own personal life experiences, you know how you'll talk to somebody and you'll hear them say like, "Oh, I heard this note from this song," or I heard this phrase, or I saw this movie, or whatever the case may be. Something that triggers a memory, something that brings you back to that exact moment in time when you first experienced whatever it is you just heard again. You know, I feel like all the times that I can recall those moments, those aha, like euphoric moments of triggering an old memory, are all times when phones weren't really a thing. Like that wasn't the main primary documentation aspect. Like, sure, they
Mhm.
might have existed, but they weren't cataloging what you were doing that week, right? And those are the things that really like. I feel like you're losing that. I didn't notice it till just thinking this through, but like society is losing that pull to that aha moment of like being in your feels of that moment that you just experienced. And I'm now curious to wonder if, you know, kids and so on, like younger people that have been around since the idea of like cataloging everything, if they still experience those.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is like with music now, our phones can do everything. So you can take your phone and watch TV while you're doing something else. You can take your phone and listen to music while you're doing something else. And I think that's a big part of why what you're saying is happening, because when I was a kid, uh you know, you would put your headphones on and you would be tied to the record player.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you could go 3, 4 feet away from the record player, but that's as far as you were getting unless you had really nice headphones with a big long cord. Um, so it forced you to do that one thing. You were
Mm-hmm.
going to listen to this record. And I've found myself guilty of this too. You know, back in the day when I was younger, I would just sit and listen. I wouldn't do other things. But now, because we have access to all these different things on our phone and our TVs and everything else, we can multitask,
Mhm.
which is super convenient. But at the same time, it's become real easy for people to do two things at once. And I know a lot of people that are guilty of this. I'm guilty of it too sometimes, but like you'll be watching TV and then you start messing with your phone, looking at shit on your phone. And it's like, granted, it's just TV, but now you are doing two things. You're splitting your brain into two categories. You're on your phone and you're watching TV. Well, neither thing is going to get 100% of your attention. So you're going to miss things
Mhm.
from what you're watching. Um, and I think the same is true with music. Like, the temptation is there to listen to music in our car, to listen to music while we're doing dishes or working out or whatever. Uh, Nobody really just sits and listens to music anymore. And that's kind of, I think, one of the reasons why what you're saying is happening is happening. Now, when we put out this record, this last one we did, um, we had a very clear idea of how we wanted people to experience it. We wanted that old school feel. We wanted people to be able to sit and listen to it and not have the usual experience. But it's like, how do you do that? How do you force someone to experience this how you want them to experience it? And again, it's not my responsibility to make people view my music the way I want them to. So what we settled on, and this goes back to another thing that Deej helped us with, um, we decided that we were going to make pre-orders available 2 weeks before streaming was open. So, and the hope was you order the vinyl, you get the vinyl before anything else releases, before it's on Spotify, Apple Music, any of this stuff. You can own the physical record on vinyl and vinyl only. And then you're forced to kind of experience it on vinyl. And then once it comes out, you can stream it, you can do whatever. But for those 2 weeks prior to release, the only way to listen to it, if you really wanted the music, was to listen on vinyl. So we made the pre order, so that when people ordered vinyl, they would get it early. And I figured we would have a few people that would dig into it and a bunch of people probably wouldn't care. Well, we sold 250 copies of vinyl pre-order before the record was even released. And a bunch of people were interested in that experience. They wanted to get the album on vinyl and hear it early.
Mhm.
So it ended up working out, but like, little things like that kind of go, they slip under the radar because we're just so used to having access to everything all the time, that sometimes it's easy to forget how we used to experience things and the memories that came along with them. I remember, like, when I saw Dazed and Confused, and at the end where the kid puts the headphones on and Foghat starts playing, dude, that took me back to my childhood because there were so many nights where I would come home, hate my parents, hate my life, and I would just sit and put my headphones on and blast whatever music I wasn't allowed to listen to at the time, close my eyes and disappear, for a few minutes. And now as an adult, it's like I'll listen while I'm in the shower, I'll listen while I'm doing dishes and stuff, and I have to remind myself sometimes I just need to sit and experience this music without any outside interference. So every once in a while, I try to, put the earbuds in, you know, try and experience the music, without any other stuff going on. But again, it's hard as an adult because you have responsibilities with kids, and now we have a granddaughter and life and work and all that stuff. But I think it's still important,
Yeah.
because it's a whole different experience when you can immerse yourself in music rather than experience it while you're doing other things.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the definition would be basically like getting the fast food version versus going for a sit down, restaurant. You're like,
Mhm.
it is. I like thinking through so much in life, everything has become let's get the fast food version of everything. And
Mhm.
because of that, now you have very true to what you're saying, multiple things going on. You're not fully taking everything in. Because you're not taking everything in, you're not really fully able to appreciate or benefit from anything that you have going on. And it just kind of builds upon chaos. And yeah, I can see where that would be extremely beneficial. I mean, I often will do that. I'll sit in the sauna and I'll have deliberately a playlist played out just for that. And I will just sit there, eyes closed, just trying to focus and immerse myself in the music. And
Mhm.
that's my drive, my motivation to get through a lengthy session and just try to, go through it. Because most times, like a short session, I'll do 15, right? But I try to stay in the sauna for anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes at a time, just roughly on average, to kind of like, I don't know. For some reason, like that seems to be the sweet spot. Anything more, I start to feel a little bit fatigued. Anything less, and I don't feel like I got anything out of it. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's thinking back to like childhood. There were so many times where I would be listening to music through my cassette player or through my Walkman, and I'd just be either laying in bed or sitting outside and just like sitting still because
Mhm.
definitely with those Walkmans, you couldn't really. I'd try to go skateboard with those, and I'd have them in my pocket, and
Yeah.
every little bump, it's like skip, skip,
Yep.
skip. And you're like, okay,
Yeah.
this isn't working. So,
Yeah, or you drop it. I had
oh,
one that I dropped probably 150 times, and the first thing that goes is you drop it, and the back comes off, and the batteries go all over the place. And so, yeah, it's definitely easier to sit still and do it. But thank God for Walkman in the 80s, man.
yeah,
I went through about six of them, and like my thing was long trips. Like my parents would go on trips, my grandparents would go on trips, and I would just kick back with whatever whatever I had with me and crank it up and ignore my parents and
yeah. I mean, that's kind of what you have to do. Um,
yeah.
it's something I guess we kind of tipped around it too, and something that I'm curious to know is if like when y'all are coming up with a song, you kind of like testing a few things. Do you have a method at which you're like, do you just listen to it at home? Do you put it in a format to where like it's on your phone, you can listen to it in the car? Like, do you have a sniff test, if you will, towards your songs, whether or not you're gonna roll forward with it or continue working on it?
I do. The thing is that that process has changed a lot. So Deej that I keep talking about, brother Deej, good friend from Lafayette, Louisiana. Um, he and I were friends for probably 10 years before we wrote a song together. And then COVID happened and he was stuck home. I was stuck home. Both of us suffered from, pretty bad depression and dark thoughts. So being home and unable to tour, both of us were in pretty bad spots. And so we started talking about, kicking around the idea of writing some songs together. And I kind of told him, I was like, man, I'm having the worst writer's block I've ever had in my entire life. And he's like, oh, it happens. Um, but he gave me so much good advice during that time about writing and, my process. And then we actually started working on a couple songs together that we ended up releasing on this new record. Um, but like just from working with him, my process changed a lot. Um, his big thing was write every day. Doesn't matter what it is, short story, little funny anecdotes, write something every day. And he said, make sure you write it with a pen or a pencil.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you are typing, most people can type more words than they can write. And he's like, you want to be able to say as much as you can with as little as possible. And he's like, if you're writing with your hands, hands cramp up, you get tired of it, and you want to quit. He's like, if you're typing on a computer, he's like, you could write whatever, you can keep going forever. So that was a big thing, was writing in a journal, writing every day. Um, and working with him on those songs, my process went from kind of a slow evolve, where it would be like I'd write the song, change it up a little bit, play it for a little bit live, and then it would change a little bit. Um, with him, having him to bounce ideas off of and stuff, um, my process became a little more fine tuned. Now my process is I go in, I record demos. Usually music comes first. And then I'll write lyrics that I think might fit with those words. And then I kind of cut and paste, move it around, uh, and then have like a rough recorded demo. And then, I'll play it, I'll mess around with it, I'll mess around with the, composition of the music part. Um, but usually now, by the time it hits the record, it's finished. Like, and that didn't used to be a thing. Like back in the day, we would record a song and then we would play it and it would sort of evolve live and take on its own like properties that maybe it wasn't like the album version. um, a lot of the older stuff that we still do has changed a lot. Like the keys have changed, the structure has changed. But on the newer stuff, how it is on the record is pretty much how we play it. Like it doesn't really, we don't take liberties like we used to. Um, but yeah, so usually I write the music first, demo that into Pro Tools in the computer, chop it up, kind of mess with it, and then vocals come in. Since getting involved with Deej, I write lyrics a lot more than I used to. I write them in my phone. If I have an idea, um, I stop what I'm doing and I write it down. He always told me too, he's like, never throw an idea away. He's like, if you have an idea today and tomorrow you think it's a bad idea, he's like, don't throw it away because you might have three lyrics in there that you might use later on. Or maybe your whole opinion of it changes 2 weeks from now and you're like, man, that's genius. I need to use it. So he's like, never throw anything away. So as a result, I have about 150 pages on my iPhone of just random lyrics. But yeah, so now the idea is kind of that I demo everything, in the computer and kind of save stuff there. But I also do voice memo stuff where if I've got my phone with me and a guitar, I'll just stop and I'll play the riff into the guitar so I record it so I have it, because
Yeah.
I have a horrible memory. I'll come up with a great riff and be like, "Oh man, that's awesome." I'll wait till I get home to record that. Then I get home and I don't remember what the hell that was. So
Not in the same way, but I do that all the time. It's ridiculous. I swear, if I don't write it down, I will forget about it. Last night, actually, as you were saying that, I wrote something down by the bed because I was like, need to remember to do this. And then so now I got to remember that the piece of paper is downstairs and I need to grab that. But yeah, um, it's I guess really that it was something that stood out there, and maybe this is the case. But to tie into the overall like song inspiration, like where does that come from? And I guess to dovetail off of that, I would assume that's probably why a lot of the earlier on stuff you were able to, or driven, inspired to get a little bit more, f- just fluidity with your songs in that moment is because of like one, discovering yourself, finding out like what does life mean to you in that sense, and also just your own views and opinions kind of shifting and shuffling throughout time. I would assume that probably has to do with why things were a little bit more fluid then versus structured now. I would assume that also has some correlation. But as far as the inspiration of songs, where does that kind of derive?
uh, you know, one thing that I think consistently finds its way into my music is mental health. Just because the way that the way that someone like me views everything is just different. So it's, it might be the topic of three different things, but the lens that someone like me is viewing those three things through is kind of, I guess, more a part of my writing than anything. Um, as I've gotten older, I've gotten less concerned with other people getting it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and more about just writing what comes to me naturally. But I would say my biggest my biggest influence when writing is just kind of feelings, like less about the tangible and more about, the intangible things that we can't really explain. Um, and when I was younger, when I wrote songs, I felt like I had to have a certain formula and tell a certain story. And what I've realized since then is that that's not me being honest as an artist. I'm not I'm not here to tell you about the thing you already know about. I'm here to tell you about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not here to market a product. I'm not here to sell tractors and pickup trucks and Bud Light. Like, I'm here to tell you about me.
Yep.
So, I find a lot of inspiration in, kind of dark things that maybe other people don't want to talk about. But, for me and a lot of people like me, this is how we kind of exercise the demons. It's how we survive. And it's a lot of a lot of musicians are depressed people,
Mm-hmm.
and how we manage it is, making art that we feel, identifies with whatever demon it is that we're trying to address on any given day. But I would say for the most part, um, my mental health, my feelings on things are probably the biggest part of what I do, and they serve as a lens to color all the things that I see. So if I see something and I write about it, it still has that unique lens of being, my perspective, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great way to look at it. And I guess if it makes perfectly makes perfect sense, but in that sense, at the same time, I guess I didn't really think about it in that same light. So, very cool, very eye opening there. And something that we've been dancing around this the whole time because I wanted everyone to kind of get a little bit of an idea of who you are, what you have going on, all these things. Now, of course, what can everyone expect whenever they go to 20 Watt Tombstone to find like what kind of music, what's the feel, what's the vibe? I know you've kind of outlaid a little bit of that, but just for everyone to kind of quickly get an understanding of.
um I mean, the records we put out over time, the earlier records were a little less mature, a little more silly. There's a couple songs that are just kind of goofy shit that was going on with us. But we've also been a band for 15 years, so in that time we've had, ample time to grow up, I guess. But but yeah, I mean, the thematically, in the beginning, we were more of a bluesy rock band that was kind of sloppy, and the subject matter kind of followed that. The second record was a little more serious, but was, we got lumped into like that stoner rock vibe because that album was a little more fuzz driven and dirty and heavier. And then now the stuff we're doing is more, straight up rock and roll, kind of like in the vein of Rival Sons and that sort of thing. Um, but I think the one thing that's kind of consistent is we try to keep the music kind of to our roots, which is, there's a lot of blues influence, there's a lot of classic rock influence. Um, and the blues will always be part of what I do, but I want the music to feel real and relatable. So, aside from, the guitar and the drums, uh, I want people to be able to feel, you know, welcomed and feel like they might have something in common. And I think by discussing our flaws, I think that makes people feel like they can trust you,
Yep.
And you know, a big thing for me is learning how to live with, my demons and understand that I will probably always suffer from depression, but that's okay. And as long as I'm coping with it the right way and, you know, not letting it run my life. And I think, if people listen to the music and understand where I'm coming from, I think there's comfort in knowing you're not alone. And I guess that's kind of what I'm hoping to do with most of this music is to, especially with the newer stuff. The older stuff, like I said, was a little different thematically, but the newer stuff is a little more along the lines of, um, embracing your dreamer side and understanding that it's okay to be flawed and be human. One of my favorite sayings that Deej used to say all the time is you can't blame people for people in people will always be people in.
Yeah.
And I think I took that to mean, you know, don't get mad at people for being what they are naturally. Embrace who you are and understand that it's okay to be, less than perfect. Like being perfect is boring anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of a world of perfection sounds great. And then at the same time, it could be a total worst case scenario. There's no real knowing until you've been there, right? But
Yeah.
you always hear about people that have everything handed to them, if you will, and they'll wind up in the same situation regardless. It's all about finding that balance. It's all about living, experiencing, and just enjoying life. So yeah.
Yeah. Livin, like Matthew McConaughey said.
Yep. Okay, all right. Well, I do have a very fun game planned. All right, so here we go. This is the second time the dinner party has ever been brought out in a show. So, the way this goes for anyone that may be watching, listening, unfamiliar with how this goes, the dinner party is simply this. You have three people that you can have dinner with. They could be alive, dead, imaginary, whatever the case may be. Your favorite cartoon character. Like, it could be anything, right? Who
Okay.
would be your three picks? And, I guess, is there a method to this madness as we go throughout this?
Oh boy. Uh that's a tough one because there's so many people that I would love to sit and talk to. Number one would probably be Charles Bukowski.
Okay.
I would I would love to pick his brain about writing and life in general. That guy had a very different outlook on people and life in general. But yeah, he would probably be number one. Um, who else? Does it matter if they're dead?
No, does not. That's the
uh,
beauty of it.
well, I'm gonna go with Jesus, man,
All
because I
right.
would like to get his take on what's going on in the world right now.
I like it. Okay.
Then
So,
I could be like, "Hey, Jesus told me this, and y'all are full of shit."
yep. Yep. Hey, You know, what better way to end a conversation, end a debate by having the answer directly given. Let's do where is I have an actual favorite for this. I guess so far we've got two ironed out here. Who's bringing the food and what kind of food are we thinking on this?
Oh boy. Well, we probably got to have Jesus bring the food, man,
Yeah.
because like that's gonna save on the bill.
Yeah.
5 loaves and 2 fish, man. He's gonna bring the wine. Well, he's gonna make the wine.
Yep. Yep.
He's gonna turn the water into wine, and then he's probably gonna feed us. So, and then we don't have to order Domino's.
I like the sound of this. It sounds very well thought out, and there's no failsafe on whether or not the food runs out because that's already covered.
Exactly.
So,
And we'll
all
see
right.
what kind of game Jesus got in the kitchen, man.
Yeah, yeah, no, I like it. I like where this is going. All right, well, you have one spot left. Who would you like to? Who would make this dinner party happen? Who would be the final seat you would like to have here?
You know, uh, man, there's so many people. Um, based on the other two that I picked, um, I'm tempted to say my buddy Brother Deej that passed away. He would be absolutely thrilled to talk to Bukowski, and I'm pretty sure he would be thrilled to talk to Jesus. That would be one of the most interesting conversations I would probably ever be able to be part of.
I agree. I think that would be a wild and fun time to be able to dive into. Here, let's get Deej on the board here. How do you think this whole combination of conversation is going to go throughout this night? Because I can imagine this is going to go all over the place. But of course, I'm sure everyone would have their specific questions that they would want to ask Jesus. So, kind of excluding that, where do you think this would just, gravitate on something more heavy, or is this going to gravitate around, joyful, cheerful times with family, whatever, throughout life, whatever the case may be? Where do you think this thing's going to take itself?
Well, there's going to be wine, so Bukowski would be drunk, which would give to some really good conversation, I think. Um, but I have a feeling that Bukowski and Jesus would be arguing with each other, and it would probably be Deej that's the referee for this whole thing. But I don't know. It's an eclectic group of folks, and it would probably go from heated arguments to laughing about true life stuff. But I also think these three could have an intellectual conversation without it turning too hostile. Bukowski would be the wild card. He might get a little aggressive.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being the case. But okay, all right. Well, that is the dinner party. So, all in all, simply a means of a nice, if you will, a mental reset, a palate cleanser to this whole overall conversation that we've had here. A fun way to kind of just break out a little bit. This next part here is the hot seat nomination. This is someone that you think would make a great guest for the show. Normally, I keep this, kind of around the idea of individuals that are already connected to the capsaicin side of the world. But as we're now starting to open the door for Swear Lounge to kick off, now we can start discussing other individuals that you think would be interesting to see featured here, or learn a little bit more about someone that you think would make a great guest for the show.
I would say probably one of the bands that we know that makes hot sauces would be a really good fit. I would just have to I don't know, I'd have to think about that. Um, my buddy Rick in Thunder Chief, out in Virginia, grows his own peppers, makes his own pepper sauce. and plays in a super heavy uh, sludge band. So he would be an interesting one, I would think, because he's got knowledge of the pepper world, plus he's an older cat like me, so he's seen a thing or two.
Nice. All right. Well, Rick, I'll be setting up a time to have you come on the podcast. Thank you so much for that nomination there. And this last part really here is greatly beneficial for those individuals that are just audio only listening on Apple Podcast. You can always come over and join us on the Spotify, YouTube, Rumble side of things where you have the video. But for those that are just audio only, where can they find you? How can they find you? And any kind of announcements that you want to make, this is a perfect opportunity for that.
Um, so the usual stuff: Spotify, Facebook, Instagram. If you Google 20 Watt Tombstone, you'll find us somewhere. Um, our website has links to all that stuff too, 20watttombstone.com. Other than that, we got a tour coming up in April and May, and we will be hitting your neck of the woods. We'll be in Texas, Louisiana. I'm trying to think where else we'll be. Texas, Louisiana. I think we got some Missouri, Oklahoma, Tennessee. Uh, what am I forgetting? Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana. A couple more in there, but we'll be out on the road for 2 weeks, and we'll be hitting Austin for a show at the Lost Well, and then doing Houston, and then Lafayette, Louisiana. So I'll be able to see our buddy Troy Primo, hopefully. But yeah, other than that, lots of touring coming this year. We've got that tour coming up, and then we've got another one in September. And then in November of this year, in the fall, we'll be doing a tour with Left Lane Cruiser from Fort Wayne, Indiana. So busy year.
Very cool. Excited to hear how 2026 is shaping up, and I can't wait to see how it goes. Obviously, so much more we can dive on into, everything from the music to the overall art aspect to just general outlook on life. There's still so much more that we can dive into, so would love to have you back on.
Nice. I'd love to come back.
Tom, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on here. If you would like to keep up with 20 Watt Tombstone, I will have the direct links down below towards the website, as well as all the ways that you can keep up with them on socials. Check out the new music as it continues to drop, as the new tour dates come out. Keep up with those. And of course, if you enjoyed tonight's episode, let me know down below what you would like to see more of, hear more of, as well as new episodes are going to continue to drop every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central. There will be some sporadic Thursday nights worked in there, possibly opening up the door for something very fun, as mentioned in this episode, Swear Lounge. Opening the idea there, having that really come into fruition. So looking forward to continuing to roll those out and dive a little bit deeper into the world of, what's going on in the world of hot, but also opening the door for ways to improve our every single day life. If you're on a platform that allows for a 5-star rating for the podcast, please go ahead and do so. That helps the algorithm get in front of other individuals that may be curious about the world of hot, all the way to those that are, rocking and rolling and immersed in that world. So thank y'all all so much for leaving those reviews. Continue to share this out with other like-minded chiliheads. And thank you all. Want to say we have sponsorship opportunities available for the podcast. So if you're looking to sponsor the podcast, you're looking to have a featured segment within it, please reach out on theswearword.net or reach out via socials and we'll get that conversation started. Current sponsors, podvision.io. If you're looking to grow your brand, start your brand, you've hit a bump in the road, you're trying to figure things out, highly recommend checking out podvision.io for all of those needs, as well as webdx.one. Maybe you have an online site, maybe you had a guy at one point, maybe you never got around to building a website. Highly recommend checking out webdx.one. Best of all, they get you looking great online while you get to focus on what you do best. I'm Brandon Swear, and for everything from the world of hot, this has been The Swear Word.